very close to afternoon. Thank you for attending our session. My name is Eric Turner. As I was briefly introduced, I'm the Vice President of Construction Operations with La Jolla Pacific, also known as LJP Construction Services. We are a third-party inspection company doing quality control, quality assurance across the country. We also do some owner's rep work, and we also do expert witness stuff and things of that nature. It is a privilege to be the moderator for this panel. It's a very distinguished group with a lot of variety. You know, the topic for our panel discussion is how technology is impacting real estate and construction, which is a very broad topic. And fortunately for us, we've got a very broad experience group here. And I'm going to give everybody a quick minute to go ahead and introduce themselves. And we'll go ahead and start off with Nish.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for coming. Just to get a gauge of the audience, could we get a show of hands for who comes from the brokerage world? Okay, and who comes from more of a construction background? Got it. And any entrepreneurs here? Okay, great context.
A lot of overlap.
Looks like it. Okay, cool. So I'm Nish Patel, partner at Inertia Ventures. We focus on real estate tech or prop tech, and we work primarily on helping early stage companies grow and scale, and then working with larger corporations as they make decisions on what kind of technology to integrate.
Great. Thank you, Nish. Mark, go ahead.
Mark Heenan. I'm a general contractor by pedigree. And some of you may have seen me speak. I did another thing yesterday with an esteemed future colleague who's sitting in the back. And that's about all I got on me.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Diego, go ahead, please.
Okay, my name is Diego Torres. I'm from Colombia. I'm the founder of 360 Global. We have a marketplace of properties. With digital advertising, we bring the seller. We also bring the buyer. We implemented 3D reality virtual tours. And we shortened the process of selling a property like in 44%.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Diego. So we do have a few topics that we're going to kind of cover, and we're going to start off with some canned questions, right? So we can kind of get this ball rolling. But the ultimate intent is to get feedback and questions from the audience, so we can really kind of gear this towards things that are very pertinent and important to you. So please, you know, if you're ready and you've got a question, raise your hand, stand up, grab a mic, jump in if you get the opportunity, because we'd really appreciate the participation. So Nish, let's go ahead and get this started with you then. You're an venture capitalist. You have a broad view of different trends impacting real estate and construction. What are some of the most prevalent trends that you're seeing in the market now?
Yeah, absolutely, Eric. I think the topic is pretty broad, so I would really break out the two into real estate technology and then construction technology, which I think are slightly different. So I think some of the trends that we've been seeing on the real estate technology side of the market that have impacted the residential side, you're seeing a lot of new business model innovation. You're seeing that a lot of short-term rental, Airbnb type models are starting to proliferate. I think a lot of that is also a result of COVID and the flexibility that I think a lot of people have. An interesting one that is a recent prop tech company that came on the news is called Picasso. I don't know if you guys have heard, but it was Spencer Raskoff. He founded Hotwire and then Zillow. He started this company called Picasso that you can buy into a second home for an eighth of the cost. You know, existing kind of premise, but a very tech-enabled model. And they actually set a record. It's actually the fastest company to reach a billion-dollar valuation. They hit unicorn status in 5 months. So really hot space on the short-term market and some of these new models there. On the retail side, we're seeing a lot of growth in the ghost kitchen space. I think in general, as retail is starting to get compressed in different ways, ghost kitchens are starting to pop up as a solution to a lot of the demand that's coming from food delivery services. So for anyone who doesn't know, ghost kitchens are when you can put a remote kitchen in a population dense area that's primarily used for DoorDash, Uber Eats, food delivery basically, but not a place you can actually go and sit down. We're seeing this impacting the workforce in interesting ways too. What some companies are taking a more remote first model. Others that we've had conversations with are taking a more hub and spoke approach, where a lot of front office members are staying in their hubs, whether that be LA, New York, Los Angeles, wherever, and then moving some of the back office and middle office divisions to other satellite branches or making them more remote. So the prevalence of more flexible workforces, WeWork type models with better amenities and different flexible ways to offer this kind of new approach that corporations are taking in a way that saves a lot of money for the corporations as they downsize their office, as well as allows for more flexibility for a lot of the workers. I think you're also seeing a lot of innovation on the technological side that is enabling. So one of the really popular trends has been iBuying. It's something Diego can speak to shortly, and that also integrates a lot of elements of AR, VR experiences to make the virtual experience a lot more seamless for someone and get them to transact on a platform. You're seeing new data points being taken in and AI and ML being able to use that in interesting ways. So one of those examples is in valuation. So Zillow just came out with a new valuation algorithm that puts their Zestimate median within 6% range of accuracy. So a lot more accuracy that's coming as a function of a lot more data being taken into account and used. And then the third area that we're really excited about is fintech being layered into PropTech as well, whether that be to advance security deposits on places that you get as an apartment, or insurance products, or an example of a portfolio company of ours called Lex. What they do is the fractionalization of real estate. So you can effectively buy into a commercial real estate building that can IPO as a single asset for fractions as little as $100. And so you're seeing this on the residential side and the commercial side, where real estate, the largest asset class in the world, is, and also the most illiquid asset class in the world, is starting to have channels that democratize the access for retail investors to be able to participate in the passive income, the appreciation, some of the tax advantages that the real estate market's seen. On the construction tech side, there's a lot of focus on 3D printing and additive materials being used for especially modular construction. Modular construction's been, I think, the golden solution for the shortfall of a lot of affordable housing in the US. So that's an interesting one that we've been taking a look at. Other applications in construction tech we've seen involve robotics and AI, and also the use of digital twins when going through the construction and planning process. But I think the way that a lot of corporations are thinking about construction and new types of technologies to integrate, which I think Mark and Eric, you can elaborate on shortly, focus around how to reduce and shorten the project lifecycle and cut costs in the process.
Great, thank you, Nish. A lot of subject matter covered there, right, and touching on a lot of different subjects. So hopefully we're starting to spark some interest in the audience and starting to formulate some questions. You touched on one thing there about iBuying, and that kind of leads us right into talking to Diego. Diego, as an entrepreneur in the real estate side, Nish touched on two categories. I can touch on a lot, but two specifically. Tell us a little bit about Casa 360, please, and then other tech trends you're seeing in the industry, maybe even in the Latin markets.
Thank you, Eric. Okay, Latin American market is very different from the US. For the beginning, for example, we don't have an MLS. So a property could be simultaneously have 4 or 5 agents. There is no centralized information, so it's a messy market. With technology, we made an evaluation algorithm that allows us to tell the seller how much is the real value of their property or their market price. Also, with 3D virtual tours, we put the buyers through their phones to see the property. In Bogota, the capital of Colombia, we have the second worst traffic in the world. So it's a small city, but go from one side to another took like an hour and a half in the rush hour. So it's very, very important for us to have this type of technology. This is not common in Colombia. Lastly, only 5 or 6 real estate companies migrate to that. That was very important for us during the pandemic. We could survive the last year of pandemic thanks to the 3D virtual tours, because the people have got scared about the virus and don't want to have in-person visits to the properties. So that's an important trend. We have operations also in Panama. So a lot of properties of Panama were sold by us only with 3D virtual tours, with no in-person visit to the buyer of the property. So I think that, those two trends are the most important in the market right now. Okay.
Great, thank you. Well, certainly hearing about the traffic in Colombia makes me feel a little better about living in Southern California. I think we have bad traffic too, but hearing that it's not the worst in the world makes me feel a little bit better. So, great. Thank you, Diego. That was good information. So we're going to talk a little bit now, I think, about the construction tech and things that are happening in the construction industry for the general contractors, for the real estate and the commercial markets, right? Because there's a lot of software and a lot of technology that can help help you streamline the construction process, get you into fast tracking your projects and getting hopefully increasing profitabilities. But what is the right one? When do you make the right decision? Whether do you buy one off the shelf? Do you develop one internally? And what are some of the best processes and programs out there? So we're gonna turn to Mark here and hopefully and talk to him a little bit about his experiences being in the construction industry. And unfortunately, we've got the benefit of Mark's claim to fame is that he's been in the construction industry before technology was really heavily involved. And I'm sorry if I'm stealing some of your thunder, but we've got the unique perspective of without it, getting into it, and then seeing the evolution of it. So, Mark, if you could, please, what have you seen that has been beneficial to streamlining and shortening the construction project cycle and obviously, hopefully, improving profitability?
So, as you said, I grew up in the construction industry. Was fortunate to happen really with the implementation of computers in construction. Construction is as those of you who are contractors know, we're typically behind the times with technology. So I was in an office the first time computers were being used in offices, and in a job site trailer the first time we were trying to implement technology out in the site. And with the family business, was lucky to see the intent that the company wanted, but also what worked and didn't work when applied in the field. And that being said, I had a good pulse on what would work for that old superintendent who used to be an iron ore miner and give us all the information that we need, on a $20 to $50 million construction job to satisfy client requirements, reporting, and everything else. So that being said, in about, I guess it was 2012, 13, Autodesk, the premier design company, which used AutoCAD, I'm sure most of you have heard of it. They bought Revit, which was another 3D design firm, and they started to implement this overall coordination platform, whereby they were creating what are now known as BIM models, building information models, and really creating a 3D computerized model of a building to make sure everything fits and works together. And so to explain kind of the technology now and how it's best implemented, or how I've seen it best implemented, I'm kind of going to walk through a project life cycle. So if you were to buy, say, a building and want to convert it to whatever else, a car dealership that you want to convert to a retail building of whatever type, the initial process would be you send out design professionals, they go to the building with the existing prints, whatever you have, and they'll mark up all the changes that you're making, and then put that on their drawings, which is going to contractors. Of course, they always have a note you architects love, which is verify in field, meaning we put it here, but don't rely on it. So then, as a contractor, we would send out our subcontractors, and for instance, in a school, the plumber would go in at nights for a certain period of time to do his field measuring. Then the HVAC contractor would. And all these people are doing measurements where the architect had already done them, and we could rely on them to be reasonably accurate, but they're doing it for a little bit more detailed coordination. Well, now with the technology that we have for 3D scanning, for instance, as you were talking about with being able to do eye visits to houses, and as everybody's seen, I'm sure, 3D models of apartments or whatever it may be, the 3D scanning technology that we use on projects can, if implemented correctly, and kind of transitioned across the project cycle, can save an owner money by letting us use that technology, the information that the architect has already gotten, and developing upon it as opposed to reobtaining it and going and measuring the same thing 5 times. We put it into a model. If that model is accurate, which based on the 3D scan it is, they're accurate to within 1/8 of an inch from a 1/4 mile away now. By putting it into a scan, we can get what actually exists and transfer that documentation to our plumber, our HVAC contractor, our electrician, everybody else, so they're all coordinating. And I did this on one project with, it was a high school, a big addition renovation. It was actually 2 projects that totaled about $50 million worth of construction. And there were 2 issues that I saw. One was exactly what I just discussed, everybody getting into the ceilings while the school was still in session to do all this field measuring because we were tearing out all the HVAC system throughout the existing school, in addition to doing an addition on the school. Another one, as a contractor, the construction documents required us to repair, and you contractors will know it, repair any damaged concrete that was damaged during the construction process. Well, I went out to the site and I saw all the sidewalks are cracked. It's a 40-year-old school. So we did a 3D scan to establish what was already damaged in advance. So we were then brought back to replace everything that wasn't our fault. And then you move on into the coordination and fabrication stage of the project. And with the 3D models now that we're creating, either on new construction or with that 3D scan that you may have, the engineers for each one of those sub-trades is going in and putting into a living document, coordinating in the same space, in 3D space, where everything is going. And with that, you can now assign priority to different elements of the building. For instance, fixed structural elements that aren't going to change. If through this design and everybody inputting information, a pipe is going through that, a sprinkler pipe, well, we know that sprinkler pipe has to move. And with the advent of, or the implementation of this in the proper way, you're able to real time transmit to the architect or a subcontractor that something that they just dropped in, you run what's called a class detection, and something that they just put into the model doesn't fit, they need to move it. Before you're out in the field, and the guy finds out he's going to put the pipe in and it runs right into a steel beam. Well, how did you not see that 2 hours ago? But we're not gonna go there. And that carries on, then into the construction with the 3D modeling software, and it's gotten to the point that it's intuitive, and those people who are used to field work can pick up an iPad and actually operate it. And just draw on either the model or 2-dimensional documents, send it off to the architect from right there, and get back information at a much faster clip. It eliminates what used to be a process of a guy in the field seeing something, taking it to a superintendent, who calls a project manager, who writes an RFI that goes to an architect, that goes to the engineer, and we're all doing that in one collaborative tool at the same time, cutting down cost, waste, and the time for all these issues to be resolved. And again, with the model, what you then have, if you're implementing in the field, you then are able to update the as-built drawings as the work is being done. And with that, you create this model as you're creating the building to match the building, so that on future expansions or anything, you're not dealing with documents that don't match what was in place. And the old way of doing that was, at the end of the job, the plumber would go and mark up all his drawings and call them, as-built documents, say, I moved this pipe over here, but it had that same VIF type quality, which is, I'm giving you information, but don't rely on it. And so now that's real time. And what that does is it helps owners on any future expansions see what they have, because there's a 3D model of it. Separately, with more advanced, if you get further into the BIM modeling process, you can drop your actual air handling units, your actual light fixtures. If you go to any manufacturer's website, you'll see that there are Revit files or CAD or BIM models that you can, as part of the submittal, drop the actual air handling unit onto the actual roof to make sure it fits on the curbs. And with that data that's in that submittal from the manufacturer's website, it has everything from the flows that air handling unit is supposed to get, the filter change frequency, so somebody in a facilities department can get automatic email updates as to when a filter needs to be changed in a unit, so that they can then be proactive as opposed to reactive. And to take it a step further, there's even inventory implementation. So a couple of the universities that I work for, they manage all of their facilities, which is, it used to be somebody's cold, they send out a tech, the tech goes, he looks at this, he looks at that, he looks at something else, and he comes back and tells his boss, oh, we need to change this filter. We don't have that filter. 2 weeks later, it's done, and it cost all that time and money. Now they can look real time at the unit from where they sit in an office. When somebody calls and says it's cold in here, they can go to that unit and see both what the unit is doing and what it may need and whether they have the inventory to do it. Or get email updates, for instance, if it's something they go through on a regular basis, get email updates as you're low on stock on this. You need to buy more of this valve, filter, sensor, whatever it may be. So what all this has done is it's enabled us to take the complex systems of buildings and put them into very easily and quickly, faster than it goes in the field, into a model that lives just as the building lives. And it's helping from a facility standpoint for anybody who owns multiple buildings. It's not only the future, but it's a way to streamline your process, or any property managers who are doing this. To streamline your process, cut your overhead, because you're not paying for, as a property manager, this person to go, check this, check that, and all the other things. In addition, with the models, we can add a fourth and even a fifth dimension. The fourth being schedule. These models can be built with schedule attached so that they actually show, you insert with each element a time frame needed for installation, and they show the building going up, and so you can see the time frame where you are as opposed to your initial schedule and what you may have to do to change it. In addition to that, you can add costs. So as an owner, if you want to beat me up over my invoice, I shouldn't say this. If you want to beat me up over my invoice, with that model, we can go and say, look, based on what you've input, you're only 50% done this. Why are you billing me for 60%? And there may be a reason, there may be not. And with adding those two elements to it, it really helps us level the tripod. And by tripod, I refer to cost, quality, and schedule as being it. I've heard it my entire life: quality construction, on time, under budget. It's any contractor that tells you that, don't believe them. We don't control that. We can't set your budget for you. We can't set your schedule. It's always going to take longer than you want it, and it's always going to take less time than we think it should have. And while we can control quality, they stand as a tripod. And they all have to level with each other in some regard. If you got all the time in the world and all the money in the world, you can get all the quality in the world. If you have 30 minutes and you need $1 million worth of work done, the quality's going to slip. But with this technology and implementing this on the design side, it helps to create a greater benefit and a greater matching and a little bit more stretching of the legs of that tripod so that it doesn't fall over. That's all I got.
Well, Mark, I have to admit, I am both pleased and disappointed. I am pleased because you were unbelievably thorough and covered a vast majority of information. I'm disappointed because I had a bunch of witty banter written down, and I can no longer use it because you've covered all the subjects. I do have one quick follow-up question, and while I'm asking this question, please, if somebody has a question, get ready to ask it, because right after we go back and forth here for a minute, we're going to open the floor up for some questions. So if you have one, please be prepared. So these are all, you touched on a lot of really good things. And in the industry, in the construction industry, the challenge is always working with the guy in the field, right? You got the superintendent, the poor last guy. Always feels like he has no say. Everything's getting shoved down his throat. He's responsible for time, quality, schedule. How effective or efficient are these tools becoming to help make the user interface and the ability for these guys to quick time react and you talked about the reaction, but be able to use these products?
So that's really coming along. As when I started to look into this BIM, BIM project delivery, it was actually right when Autodesk was launching their product BIM 360. And with my company, I set up a committee and we were working on using it off-label because it was really just a coordination tool. And Autodesk had called us and said, eventually they called me and said, what are your people doing? Why do you keep bothering our customer support team? I said, I'm using your product for something else. And they said, oh, well, our engineers are working on building that module. And I said, I don't care, I want to know it because your engineers aren't going to do a good job. And I need it to be seamless. I have been the man in the field, and I am now the executive in the office, and I've been in every role in between. I need it to be seamless for him and getting me the information that I need, nothing in between. And any superintendent who has to click one button that they don't think they should have to click, or submit and verify, they'll submit it, they'll never verify it. So they brought us into their beta testing, and now we're working with them actually pre-beta on another platform to make it more intuitive for the people in the field. And I have on my iPhone both building 3D models, all the documentation for our projects from communications from beginning to end, and the living models of the buildings as they're going up. Not on every project. It's a perceived cost increase to owners, but I think the value, it's one of the best values that they can get. And for contractors, it is finally getting to where our people in the field will and can do it, and they actually like it. And as you know, from a QA/QC standpoint, if you're walking a site and your guy can see something and just tap on an iPad exactly where this issue is, take a picture of it, there's no more bad ceiling tile in this room and somebody goes in and fixes that ceiling tile over there. So it's really getting to the point, and I don't want to sound like an Autodesk salesman, but they are the bear in the market, and they've done a really good job of looking for customer feedback from people like us and boots on the ground to make their product work at all levels, from the university facilities manager to a carpenter who's putting down his hammer and picking up his iPhone.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I can certainly attest to how frustrating it is when you're trying to finish punching a house and you're trying to get, or a unit, or any project, right? And you're trying to wait, and trying to get the information to the trade, and then the trade to come back out, and a lot of technology nowadays makes that effort seamless. Okay, we got a question? All right.
So very recently, they started using 3D technology to scan the home instead of physically measuring the exterior. One drawback is if you have to stop, you have to start all over. Are you aware of any product on the market that you don't have to start all over if you have to stop? Because one thing is people like to keep their animals separated in a room, so you might be using the bathroom, and then you're stuck and you have to start all over again.
So I'm not familiar with anything like that for the residential
Yeah,
market.
well, it's for appraising a home, and they're starting to use realtors now to collect the data and scan the homes. Instead of sending the appraisers out to the property, everything's going into an application, and it's done at the site. And all they do is the analysis back in their office. They don't even come out.
Gotcha. So with what I have experience with, it's typically a little bit more, I'll call them complex buildings than the 4 interior walls of a house that we're looking at. We're looking at, for instance, all the ductwork, piping, and structure that would be above this ceiling that you don't see. So in order to do that, they can do it at separate times. What they do is they just triangulate. They'll set their scanners at 3 different locations, and with that they can triangulate, and the computers do the rest. I'm bricks and sticks.
Yeah.
I don't get that part.
It's a fairly new rollout. It's only a year in actually doing it this way, and it's just one major national lender that's doing it as far as I know. But eventually it'll probably grow into being more prevalent.
Yeah, it certainly sounds like it. If only one company's doing it now, it's like, make a note of that, right?
Yeah.
There'll be some
Yeah,
competition hopefully soon, which will
Well, as
drive.
far as I know, I
Right.
mean, I, through this particular company that is handling it, but it really changes the way the closing process
Sure.
works, because appraisers can take 2 to 3 weeks sometimes to get out to a property, and now they don't have to.
I think as the need for that grows, they'll solve it, again, because there is a solution. I think right now, a lot of people are doing it with something that's, just a single, they walk through and hold this scanner.
Yeah, on the phone, on the cell phone.
Right, and again, once they realize that or recognize that need, they will, they'll go to a triangulation or be able to set points. So another example of what we use it for, checking slab flatness. We've got iPads with a pole that somebody literally just taps the pole on a grid, and with the GPS, it locates where you are and the elevation at which that pole taps. So they'll probably get to something like that where you can set it. I'm at this doorway right here, and it'll tell you, okay, you're in the same spot that you stopped, and then move on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd like to see that happen eventually, but like you said, when they realize there's a need, because right now it's just an acceptance. You have to
Right.
start over if you have to stop. That's just the way it goes.
Diego, have you heard of anything?
No.
Anything like that in the market also? Okay. Yeah, because you're right. I mean, I think it's certainly going to be a market-driven thing, but, maybe it's the kind of thing where, now that houses are moving so, inventory is moving so quickly right now, it's like, it doesn't matter what the square footage is, like, you just get a cash offer for it. Thank you very much, though. Good question, good interaction. Thank you. Okay, we got another question right back there from the gentleman.
With each one of y'all's prospective businesses, do you use currently anything integrated with blockchain? Or if not, do you see that becoming something you're going to integrate into some form or process or software that maybe you will be integrating in the future?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I think distributed ledger backend systems and blockchain have seen a lot of benefit from a fintech and transaction management perspective. So the company that I mentioned earlier, what they're doing is they're effectively securitizing large real estate properties, either at a commercial level, single family level, and chopping them into little blocks. The order management process and the order flow process of how that is ultimately treated on the back end, and even from an ownership perspective, there's a lot of use of distributed ledger backend systems integrated in regard to being able to transact well for that. So I think that's probably the largest area that I've seen, but I think more broadly in real estate, you look at other companies like Proppy, where they will facilitate using some sort of a crypto asset to be able to transact when you're buying a home. There's also a lot of landlords that have accepted rent in the form of different crypto assets. So I think the primary use case that we've seen from a technological perspective has really been in managing the back-end systems for some of those transactions. I don't know if you guys have interfaced with blockchain at all.
We're using blockchain for smart contracts mainly. I'm beginning to use it also for digital authentication for the titles of the properties.
Yeah.
It's above my pay grade.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really interesting one. I've had conversations with dozens of large title companies where the processes are so manual, like there's literally file cabinets where people are writing down things on pen and paper. But to your point, a lot of that is starting to get digitized and transparent now. So that's a huge one.
Excellent. Great question. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions out there right now? Okay. Nothing.
All right.
I don't know if part of one of your examples of a company that's doing that kind of stuff, I don't know if we just used part of that just
No.
now in this. Okay, great. So we'll transition back to you, Nish, and tell us about a portfolio company that you of yours, and a problem that they're solving, and how do you guys think about investing in as a venture capitalist company in some of these other markets?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you an example of a recent investment that we made. It was in this company called Snapped. It's a fraud detection software company focused on tenant screening. So you go apply to live in a building, you got to submit your bank statements or pay stubs. A lot of people will forge their documents and tamper with the PDFs to show that they have an extra zero in their bank account to get approved for a building. And surprisingly, there's no one else that's applying this kind of a fraud detection software for the purposes of tenant screening. So we were surprised to see that there was no one else playing in this arena, but I think we were even more surprised to see the frequency with which this happened. So across the 200,000 units that this company has under management, and they run all applications through, they're seeing about a 14% fraud detection rate for applicants, which is a lot higher than we expected. In some geographies like the Southwest and Georgia, it's closer to 30%. What I liked about the company, besides the fact that they're solving a really important problem that no one else is the reason for why they started it too. So Dan and Noah founded this business about 4 years ago, and the purpose was because they both had multifamily portfolios of their own. They were facing this issue where a lot of tenants would apply, fake their documents, get approved, and now, because of COVID, there's an eviction moratorium. You end up getting into a unit, you don't pay a dime of rent for months, and you become a squatter, and there's nothing they can do to kick you out. It's a 10K plus process to try to evict you. And so they found a really feasible software application for being able to prevent that. So I think the takeaway that I would share with all the other entrepreneurs in this room would be to focus on a problem in a very customer-centric way. The way that they really thought about the model and pricing was largely a function of what solved the biggest pain point or saved the most amount of money for landlords. And delinquency costs and eviction costs are incredibly steep, and they came up with a really good solution to tackle that piece.
Thank you, Nish. What about, so when you talk about customer-centric, right? So there's, a broad spectrum of, entrepreneurs, right, who are going to develop different, tech-savvy tools, right? So when you talk about customer-centric tools, which, are you talking about the customer that the app is geared for? So say a business, it's an app or a software technology that a business can use and help their customers, right? Essentially, they're both customers, right? So which customer do you focus it on? Do you focus on the user of it, or do you focus on the end customer and how it can benefit them, which would also in turn benefit, the owner or the developer of it?
Yeah, no, Eric, that's a great question. I would bifurcate those two into B2B models and then B2C models. If your main clients are enterprise customers, the way that they're going to think about it is this going to save me money or is this going to make me more money? if you're focused on the end consumer, consumers, in my experience, have been willing to pay a convenience premium. So if you make something incredibly intuitive, incredibly convenient, cut out steps for them and save them time, then that's something that a customer will gravitate towards. So I'd say customer-centric focus on enterprise is a lot more quantifiable. I'd say focus on the consumer, it's a lot more about the user experience and the convenience factor.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, Nish. Diego, in the Latin market, which you're obviously very experienced in, what advantages is technology, and what opportunities do you see coming on board, and what are you personally excited about?
Okay, thank you, Eric. The main advantage is that Latin America is a growing market, right? There are a lot of opportunities in a growing market because each month you got more inventory and more buyers. Mm-hmm. So I think that there's two main opportunities. The first one is to become a regulated market, that everyone, like in the US, that sells property needs a license to do it, but it doesn't depend on us. It's politics, mm-hmm. Yes. So the second opportunity is about technology. The majority of the realtors in Latin America don't use technology, they use their agendas. So what happens with that? The average time that it took for a people to buy their next home is like 7 to 8 months. We reduce it to 3 or month with our technology. But what happens with the realtor? For example, I don't know, in December, if I was a realtor, old-fashioned realtor, I got a client, yes, and I go to my agenda. But I lose contact with that client. Mm-hmm. Like Mr. Rodriguez said in the prior conference,
yeah,
right?
I was going to say, I'm like, boy, this ties in very well, man.
And this is a decision that took a lot of time to the people because they're going to have a debt with the bank for 15, 20 years to buy that house, right? Our technology makes an automated retargeting with similar properties. For example, if you came searching for a property, I don't know, in some city, we are taking new properties for it with the same price, the same budget, the same neighbor, and that's how we shorten that process, okay? So there's a lot of opportunities with technology.
Awesome. Curiously, with this technology, was this something that you and you had a team develop? Was this kind of your brainchild?
Yes.
And you said, hey, I'm going to develop this and I'm going to build this? And so it's a proprietary?
Yes, we develop a customized algorithm for every part of the process with our in-house technology team.
Awesome. That's great. Because one of the things we were talking about as a panel prior to this panel was, the decision-making process as to whether or not, okay, do I hire a software company and build my own platform? Or do I try to find something like you did and use it for off-market? Here's a tool, but I can apply it like this, even though it's not what it was intentionally designed for, and maybe they'll kind of get there, right? And in the example that we had with the question about the 3D modeling on the inside of the home, right? Those are all decisions that, as a company, depending obviously on the size of your company, depending on your profit margins and whether you got a lot, because we built a proprietary app as well. And what we quickly learned is we are now married to the software developer for the rest of our lives, or for the rest of the existence of this app. We are in bed holding hands with this designer forever, right? Because as soon as somebody else would touch the code, it's dead to him, right? He's like, well, I'm not touching it anymore. So it's very interesting. Do you have some insight on that?
Same applies for us. And my firm with Autodesk, what you end up having is all of your documentation through this one platform. But I was comfortable in making that determination, both because the company was the status quo before we even started to move to this model. And when they bought Revit, I got wind of it, and an architect friend of mine brought me into his office, and he was very technologically savvy. He gave me the whole spiel about all the things it could do that I just explained to you, and I said, okay, this does make sense. Now it makes sense. We have to figure out how to make it work, right. And that was just the decision, and I again had that confidence that they'll figure out how to make it work.
Awesome, thank you, Mark. Okay, we got a couple minutes left. Do we have any questions out here? Now, we didn't do that good of a job thoroughly covering every topic that there's no outstanding questions. I mean, granted, the panel was fantastic. These guys were on point the entire time, but there's got to be at least one question out there to save us.
They're tired of seeing me up here. Let them go get lunch.
Well, I certainly am.
They're
Yeah,
hungry.
speaking of which, do you have any questions for Nish? No. Okay, nothing heard. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for participating, and we really appreciate it.